Good morning. I want to call the Committee on Higher Education as well as the Assembly Budget Subcommittee Joint Committee to order. Good morning. Welcome. We are here today to discuss the outside employment policies that govern executives at California's public universities. Let me start by saying that I believe that the public higher education is vital to California's economic success. I support our UC and CSU systems and believe that our leaders must have adequate funding and the flexibility in order to do their important work. But I also expect that UC and CSU executives will use their positions to advance the needs of students and the interest of the public. When high-level executives accept paid positions with questionable private for-profit corporations, it erodes the public's trust and undermines our ability to push for additional funding. We have seen reports showing that some university leaders have received significant incomes from questionable sources. Our goal today is to understand from researchers, university leaders, and stakeholders whether existing conflict of interest and outside employment policies are sufficient. I'll turn now to Assemblymember McCarty and ask him to give additional opening comments.
Thank you, Chairman Medina. I know we have a pretty detailed agenda today, and we have a couple hours to get through this, but I wanted to thank you and your staff and certainly our Budget Committee staff for helping put this together. And you're right, higher education is so critically important to California, but so is the overall management and the public trust in these systems. And that's why there is so much public concern on perceived and real conflicts of interest with these outside compensation issues. And certainly there's been long-standing concerns as far as the some would say excessive compensation from UC executives making sometimes double or more what our governor makes. And so that's why when some of these outside incomes come into play and questions as far as how much time individuals set aside to running their campus versus how much time they set aside serving on these boards is one issue. But also, again, what's the overall benefit to the public, to the university system, to the students, when our chancellors and executives serve on these outside boards? So those are just some of the questions that we hope to get into today, as well as looking at the overall policy. I think going forward, it's one thing to look at a few examples ripped from the headlines, but I think our role is going forward is what is the best policy for the state of California. Certainly there are certain things that the legislature can do and certain things that the University of California can do, and there is some overlap. So that's going to be the genesis of today's conversation. Look forward to our public testimony. And I also want to thank the professors from George Mason University who've come all the way from Washington, D.C. to lend their insight on this issue. I know they've done tremendous research on this topic, and look forward to the panel. So with that, let's begin.
Thank you. And at this time, I'll invite the first panel to come on forward. And again, welcome and thank you for being here with us this morning.
Thank you, Chairman McCarty and Chairman Medina, for the opportunity to testify at today's hearing regarding the outside compensation for executives within the California State University and University of California systems. My name is Jim Finkelstein, and I'm a professor of public policy at George Mason University. My colleague, Dr. Judith Wildy, and I are pleased to be here to talk with you about two sets of ongoing research projects in which we've been involved for a very long time. I first learned about university presidents serving as corporate directors over 50 years ago after seeing that the then president of Ohio State University was listed as a member of a board of a local bank. My father told me that this was a way for the community to supplement the university president's salary. What then might have been considered a quaint practice has become something much more and led to my nearly 20 years of research on the practice of presidents at top-tier public and private universities serving as directors of publicly traded corporations. In addition, for the past 6 years, with a grant from the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation, I've conducted the first ever study of contracts for public university presidents, including interviews with many of them regarding their corporate board service. Our most recent study of presidents serving on corporate boards was conducted in 2010 and included 134 public and private universities selected by combining an annual list of the top 100 universities from 2 sources. The majority of these turned out to be public universities. We matched the names of these presidents against boards of publicly traded corporations using data available from proxy statements filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Among other things, these proxy statements identify those who serve as directors of a company and provide very detailed information about their compensation. We used these to collect data on 40 variables for each university president serving on a corporate board. Now to our findings. Overall, presidents of 43 institutions, approximately 1/3 of our sample, served on the board of 1 or more publicly traded corporations. As a group, these individuals served on a total of 74 corporate boards. I'd like to focus on highlights from 2 areas: directors' compensation and their time commitments. With regard to compensation, we found, 1, that the total compensation paid to these 43 presidents for their service on corporate boards was nearly $11 million for just 1 year. 2, the average directorship paid nearly $148,000 per year. For more than half of these, the value was approximately $163,000 per year per board. For the 65 boards that paid compensation, it varied from just under $18,000 per year to more than $450,000 per year. More than half of the boards paid over $100,000 per year. 22 directorships provided total compensation of over $200,000 per year, and 4 paid more than $300,000 per year. With regard to the amount of time presidents devote to their corporate directorships, we found that the number of board meetings scheduled annually per company varied from 3 to 16. According to the proxy statements, there were a total of 540 full board meetings for these 74 corporations. Most presidents serve on at least 1 board committee. These committees have between 1 and 14 meetings per year per company. Again, according to the proxy statements, we calculated that there were a total of 600 committee meetings among these corporations. With this information, we estimate that a director spends approximately 12 days per year participating in committee and full board meetings per corporation. We also estimate that in our sample, 1/3 of the presidents had to travel across country to attend these meetings. This can add, we estimated, about 2 days per meeting to their time commitment. Based on our research, we conclude that serving as a corporate director has considerable financial benefits to the individual. These include directors' fees, stock awards, and option awards. In addition, some corporations provide pension and non-qualified deferred compensation plans for their directors. Depending on the corporation, there may be other financial benefits, including, for example, insurance, travel, and even something called directed charitable giving. We can also state that corporate directors are required to make a substantial time commitment, not just in terms of attending committee meetings and board meetings, but also in conference calls, preparation time, and travel. I'd now like to ask my colleague, Dr. Wildy, to report on how presidents view their board service and address the policy implications of our research.
Thank you, and thank you again for inviting us. Our Kauffman-funded study allowed us to interview presidents of 8 university members of the American Association of Universities. Our goal was to collect anecdotal data, but to collect it in a consistent manner in order to provide a more complete understanding of the role of corporate board service. We know from these interviews that the presidents did not take annual leave for the days they spent at board meetings or committee meetings. This suggests that they received their full university salary while being paid by the corporation for their board service. Their responses to a set of specific questions can be summarized in 4 statements. First, few presidents talked about the personal economic benefits, although one individual did state that he saw this as a way for his board of trustees to supplement his salary. The presidents identified a variety of ways in which this service was a benefit to their institutions. They included networking, gaining a deeper understanding of governance, increased opportunities for research collaboration, and fundraising. They believed that prestige was the primary reason that corporations want a university president on their boards. In cases where corporate headquarters were local, they believed that this established stronger ties to their own communities. What does all of this mean for you, for the presidents of the companies, for the public, and as members of the Assembly? Well, first, it's worth noting, as Assemblyman McCarty just did, that presidents of public universities are nearly always among the highest paid public executives in a state. Based on our current study of nearly 250 contracts of public university presidents, we find that it is increasingly common for those at top research and flagship universities to have multi-year contracts with total compensation exceeding $1 million per year, inclusive of benefits, bonuses, and various perks. Many also receive tenured faculty positions at high salaries when they step down from their presidencies. Most high-level public executives who are elected or appointed are subject to restrictions on their outside business activities, ethics reviews, and strict financial disclosure requirements. By contrast, presidents of public universities are rarely subject to such limitations. This gives rise to a fundamental question of public policy. Should these public executives be allowed to receive outside compensation beyond their salaries? If so, should policies governing this practice be the purview of each institution's governing board, a state's higher education authority, or a legislative process? If a decision is made to allow presidents of public universities to serve on corporate boards, a set of operational questions also should be addressed. For instance, should university presidents be required to obtain prior approval from their own boards of trustees, or to submit to the review of an independent ethics commission or some similar body? Do universities have policies, or are they considering adopting policies to regulate such presidential relationships with corporations? Should boundaries be established, especially in terms of real or perceived conflicts of interest, and what should these be? Or finally, what are the appropriate mechanisms for disclosure and assuring transparency with the stakeholders? A second set of questions deals with potential advantages and disadvantages of presidential board service for the institutions themselves. For instance, are there real reasons to appoint presidents as directors of corporations? Do such appointments benefit universities, for example, in the form of research support, funding of other university projects, consulting opportunities for presidents or their faculty members, or employment for graduates? And actually, although benefits seem to be quite limited, we do have some data on that. Are presidents who serve on corporate boards more likely to promote business practices or entrepreneurial activity on campus? Or do corporations influence university programs and/or universities' research agendas? Until we understand more fully the extent of presidential service on corporate boards and the motivations of corporations for seeking out university presidents, we cannot determine whether the practice benefits or harms higher education or serves the public interest. The benefits to a president are clear. Whatever the answers to our questions, we anticipate that presidential board service has the potential to change higher education. In response, legislatures, state agencies, or boards of universities will need to develop policies to ensure that such service supports the missions of their institutions and the needs of society. So again, I thank you for your time, and we will answer questions you might have.
I'll go to questions from the committee. And if not seeing any, I will have a question. Your study was on corporation presidents serving on corporations. Can you tell the committee anything about presidents who serve on not-for-profit boards?
Something that I have not studied. The American Council on Education, which is essentially the trade association for university presidents, does conduct a survey every 3 or 4 years of presidents, asking them questions about all sorts of things. And one of the questions on their last survey, which I believe was published in 2012, asked them about all board service. They didn't distinguish between serving on a corporate board or a nonprofit board. They report that about 80% of presidents serve on a board of some sort or another. If our study is correct, and I believe it is, because the Association of Governing Boards, which is the trade association for trustees of universities, has also done a survey that suggests about a third of presidents serve on corporate boards. I think we could estimate that probably another 50% of presidents serve on a board of a nonprofit or a community organization or something like that. But there is no definitive study out there about service on nonprofit boards, of which I'm aware.
And then you said you've learned about the practice of presidents serving on corporate boards 50 years ago, as a young person in Ohio, it sounded like.
Right.
How long has this been a practice? How long do you think presidents have been serving on for-profit corporate boards?
I think in a community like Columbus, where I grew up, where you had several corporations that were headquartered there, publicly traded corporations. There was Bank One, which was City National Bank at the time, became Bank One. It's now J.P. Morgan Chase. The president of Ohio State almost always served on that board, whoever the president was. President always served on the board of the Limited Corporation, often served on the board of American Electric Power and Borden, which were companies headquartered in Columbus. My best guess is that the practice was reasonably common in communities where there was a university and there were corporations headquartered. The larger issue of presidents serving on national corporations where the university is in one geographic location and the corporation is headquartered across the country or halfway across the country, this is something that I first began to notice in 1998 when I did my first study.
And I think you did a pretty good job of explaining, and I well understand that presidents who serve on corporate boards are well compensated.
Yeah, very. We found in our first study, one president, $50 million in stock options from serving on a corporate board.
So, I understand the personal, that it could be personal, financial, or it oftentimes is economic for them to serve on the board. What benefit is it to the corporations, and why do they look for presidents to serve on their board? And is it in their economic interest?
I guess a couple of responses. One is we've never been able to successfully interview a CEO or a chairman of a corporation to ask them why they have presidents serving on a corporate board. We were successful for the first time in 2010 to ask presidents why they think they are asked to serve on corporate boards. And as Dr. Wilde suggested, the reason they give is that presidents bring some prestige to the board. I can tell you anecdotally, when Sarbanes-Oxley Act was passed, that act requires on the audit committee for at least two of the independent directors to be only staffed by independent directors, and at least two of them need to be certified as financial experts. No university president in our sample who served on an audit committee was certified as a financial expert, despite the fact that people said they were running very large agencies, some as large as a corporation. So again, I can't say definitively based on our research what the companies see, other than what the president's reported to us, which was prestige for the company.
Okay. Ms. Olson, you have a question?
Sure. Just one question. In the research and studies that you've done, is there any evidence to suggest that a president or a chancellor's service on a corporate board has harmed that individual's university in any way?
Based on news reports that we've collected over the years, there was a president a number of years ago who served on the board of a coal company that was cited by the federal government many times for violations. There was a horrible accident at that coal company with loss of life. The president of the university at the time was sitting on the safety committee. President was tied up in depositions for a long, long time. Ultimately, the alumni and the board of the university asked the president to step down off of that corporate board.
And what was the harm to the university?
Reputation.
Of the university or of the president?
Of the university.
And how was that measured?
I think that from the press reports, it was perceived to be unseemly for the president to be involved with a company that was considered to be a bad actor.
And so there was less interest in faculty teaching at that university or students attending that university?
I think that there were lots of reported student complaints, unrest. There were faculty who were upset about it. University presidents are community leaders, and as such, faculty and students take seriously the role model that a president is for the institution.
Certainly.
And they want to make certain that they are well represented and that the president shares the values of the larger community.
Okay, thank you. So that would be the most stark example you could recall?
That's the most stark example.
Okay.
Yeah, there are examples. There were university executives serving on the board of Enron. That didn't go so well either.
Assemblymember McCarty.
Thank you. And you somewhat touched on this, but going back to your comments, Dr. Wild, as far as the heart of the issue is clearly there's benefit to the chancellor as far as compensation and potential professional development and so forth. But I guess the question is, what's the benefit to the university and the taxpayer-funded university? And so in your studies, have you figured out how you could quantify that, and potentially should there be a requirement that these individuals seeking to serve on these outside paid bodies have to show the benefit to the university?
Well, first, I can add that we have spent some time going back through our data and found that there were 12 boards that provided some sort of financial support to the universities whose president served on those boards. Now, it's kind of difficult. We were able to figure out monies. When you look at them, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $33 million total that were given to these universities. However, over $27 million went to only two institutions. One of them was the CEO of the company was a graduate of the university and got a big donation and may have been able to get that regardless of whether they served on the board or not. The other 8 that reported something, there's a threshold, so really minimal stuff that they might have given, we don't have data on. But there were 8 that reached a reportable threshold, and of those there were, 10 of them had some kind of donation. 7 were private, 4 were public. The public ones received, 3 public institutions received a total of $4 million. So many of these donations were, I think 2 or 3 of them were $1.5 million. All the rest were $100,000, $200,000. So there was minimal benefit, financial benefit back to the university. Other than the financial benefit, we haven't been able to quantify any specific benefit to the universities.
This is a very difficult question because you either have to get universities or corporations to share data publicly that they normally wouldn't want to share.
Yeah.
You could, but there would be some metrics. Alumni placements in the corporation. In other words, how many graduates of the institution are employed by that corporation? Does the corporation have a matching gift program that benefits the university? Are there research contracts or grants from the university? Does the corporation invite faculty to come and do either professional development work with the corporation? Do faculty consult for the corporation? But these are the kinds of things that collecting them as a researcher in a systematic way becomes very, very difficult. So all we know are anecdotal reports. And the reason that our studies are based upon SEC filings as opposed to public disclosure statements filed by presidents with state agencies is we have found those to be very unreliable.
Self-disclosure.
The self-disclosure.
Yeah.
For instance, in my state of Virginia, these presidents are required to fill these out. They go to Richmond, they sit in a file, and no one ever sees them. No one ever checks them. There's nothing. And trying to get them under a FOIA request is almost impossible. So when Dr. Wildy talked about disclosure and transparency, those are two different things. It's one thing to disclose. It's another thing to make that information available so that others can read it and understand it and use it as a basis for policy. I do know that in the materials that were prepared by your staff, there were summaries of the disclosure statements for chancellors in the UC and California State University systems. I don't know how widely those are typically made available, and I don't know what the check and balance is on the accuracy of those data. With the SEC, if the corporation misfiles or makes a misstatement, there's a consequence.
Assemblymember Chavez.
Thank you. The story you talked about the issue with the coal industry and Enron. In your testimony, you listed 5 bullets that you felt could help this as far as university presidents obtain prior approval, public university presidents require, like other government officials, submit to the Ethics Commission policies. Was anything changed in those 2 universities that oversaw this?
I don't think in terms of policies, no. I think that
do you know or don't?
Awareness. I think the presidents of those institutions probably wouldn't make the same mistake twice.
Now, in both those cases, the coal and Enron, I assume they're not from California.
No.
Okay. Bringing it back to California, is there any instances of impropriety in the state of California that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you.